Hi, everyone. I just wanted to let you all know we're giving folks a few more minutes to just sign on, and then we'll get started. Because we're in webinar mode, everybody's automatically muted, but we can go ahead and use the chat in the meantime. Thanks so much for being here. Well, hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us. I know a few more folks are going to continue to sign in and trickle in. For those of you either on the phone and can't see who's speaking or who I haven't met before, I'm Katie Carter, the CEO at Pride Foundation. I'm super excited to be able to talk with you all today. We're also joined, you can see on video, Jeremiah, our Director of Programs, Jed, our Regional Director of Community Engagement, Ali, our Director of Community Engagement, and then we actually have our whole staff team who are also here, but we're just limited in the videos that we can share in this webinar format. So got the whole staff team and some board members, and right now we have almost 60 people on the call. So we're super excited to be able to share with you a little bit more about Pride Foundation's COVID-19 response efforts. And we really wanted to create this space where we can share with our community of supporters and organizations a bit more than we can over email about what our response efforts are looking like right now and what we think they're going to be looking like in the days and weeks to come, and give you all a chance to ask questions and share your thoughts. I don't know about y'all, but really having these spaces to connect has been really crucial these past few weeks. And while there's nothing like meeting in person, I'm so grateful for this platform to be able to connect with y'all. So just starting with a little bit of housekeeping, we're using the webinar version of Zoom so that more people could attend a regular Zoom meeting. So we had more than 80 people register today, and we have so far a little more than 60 participating. The downside of that is that you can only see me and other presenters, and that we can't really see one another. So we know that that's a really important connection point, and we'll be looking into scheduling more briefings and meetings in the coming weeks with smaller groups of people so that we can be in more dialogue with one another and in more communication than we can in this particular platform. And because we have so many people today, your microphones have all been muted just because that sort of prevents us from having to go back throughout these meetings to ask people to mute themselves with the background noises. So we're going to leave time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, but I encourage you all to ask questions as you go. If you look down in the bottom strip, you have a Q&A function. So Jeremiah is going to be moderating that for us. So go ahead and ask your questions as they come up, and I'll pause throughout the presentation to take those questions, and then we have time at the end too to really dig in there. For folks who are calling in on the phone, you can email Elan, E-L-A-N, @pridefoundation.org if you have questions, and Elan will funnel those to Jeremiah and make sure that we get those answered in the presentation. And if not, you can all follow up with me after the Zoom meeting to be able to answer any of those questions. So we're also going to be sharing links and resources in the chat. Thank you, Jed, for moderating our chat function. So anything we're talking about, we'll add links and emails and things like that in the chat, and you all can also participate in that avenue. And we are recording this webinar, so it will be available online within the next day or so, and you should receive a link to in case you want to listen to it again and you want to share it with other folks, and we'll put it up on the website as well. And just a caveat, as you all I'm sure are aware, Zoom's been having a lot higher traffic than it typically has in the past couple of weeks. And so we're really hoping that we continue to not have technical difficulties, but just giving you a caveat, if for some reason everything goes wrong, we'll go ahead and record this and put it up on the website anyways. But so far so good, so knock on wood. I want to just get a sense of who's in this space with us and also try to be a little bit more interactive and practice my virtual meeting skills. So I want to start with a poll, which should pop up on your screen. And it's just a question of where are you joining us from? Which state and the region that we're in are you calling in from? So give everyone a few seconds. I also know that we have both supporters as well as folks from our partner organizations with us today, and I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the people and the groups who are working to keep our community safe right now and always. So just big thank you to y'all. Okay, so it looks like we've got a big chunk of people who have voted, and I'll share this with you all. But we have folks from Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and from Washington. So we have folks from all across our region. Really great to have you with us. So thanks for playing with the polling function. We'll have a couple more later in the presentation too. So I don't think I have to share with any of y'all, but we are really in a storm right now, and there are many signs that are indicating that we may just be at the beginning of it. We know that we're going to be in a really different place in our world and in our local landscapes here in the Northwest when we get on the other side of this. Things could look really, really different than they do today or than what we've been used to. And things are shifting every single day, and I know that we've all had to pivot a whole bunch to stay on top of this really rapidly changing and unprecedented, in our lifetimes at least, situation. So even here at Pride Foundation, a lot has had to change in the past few weeks, which I know is true for so many organizations. We had to postpone the Equity Awards, which is our biggest fundraising event of the year. We shifted a few weeks ago so that all of our staff are working remotely, and we halted all travel and external meetings to ensure that we're doing our part in ensuring that we're helping to stop spread of COVID-19. We've had to develop new policies and practices for things like making sure parents and caregivers on staff can meet all of the multiple demands that are being asked of them right now. Our operations are all continuing, which we're really grateful to be able to say, including the administration of our scholarship program, but we have redirected a lot of our staff time and our focus to our response efforts in this crisis because it's just absolutely necessary. As the only LGBTQ community foundation in the Northwest, our priority right now in the short term is working to keep our communities safe and to meeting emerging needs, while also recognizing that we're in a long game and that our communities are going to need even more support in the months and even in the years to come. So we have to be planning both for what we need to do today, tomorrow, and next week, as well as what we're going to need to do in 3 months, in 6 months, and in a year. We know that the groups and organizations who work with and support LGBTQ communities on the front lines are being hit really hard right now and are going to continue to be. Many are continuing to provide services and support to community as they're navigating these major shifts in what it looks like to provide those services when shelter-in-place orders have been issued or when other quarantine measures have to be taken into consideration. Many have also had to cancel major fundraising events that were really critical sources of revenue for their ongoing operations. We know that this means that organizations in the short term are going to need operational expenses to keep their doors open, virtual doors open, and to continue to provide community support. but that there will also be these longer term budget gaps as a result of all of the shifts that we're experiencing right now. Generally speaking, we know that LGBTQ people are much more vulnerable during a crisis. We already experience discrimination in many facets of our lives, regardless of whether there are legal protections in place in the states and areas where we live. People who lose their jobs in this moment might find it harder to get new ones, and that might result in a loss of healthcare or a loss of housing. And we know that many mainstream service providing organizations are not always open and friendly to LGBTQ people, and our community members may delay getting the healthcare that they need, food that they need, and other necessities out of a really legitimate concern for their safety and inclusion in those spaces. We know that in this pandemic, especially, certain communities within LGBTQ communities are going to be impacted even more, including Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people living with HIV and AIDS, women of color in particular, older adults and elders, people with disabilities, people who have already been experiencing homelessness, and East Asian communities who are increasingly being targeted with violence and discrimination right now. And we're going to be centering these communities in all of our response efforts. So I want to just pause and see if there's any questions before I get into talking a little bit more about what our response efforts are. Good, Jeremiah?
Currently no questions, but I just wanted to add that in addition to our region, we also had folks joining us from other places across the country.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh yeah, I see folks from Texas, everywhere. Thanks, great. So what is really fundamentally guiding our work right now is the hope that when we look back on this time, we know that in the face of fear and uncertainty, that everything about our response was centering care and love and support for our communities, and that we used every single tool we had at our disposal to be able to provide support in this moment. So our first step, and we're still in process of doing this, is to reach out to all of our current and recent grantees to check in with them, to affirm that we're in this with them, and to ask about what they need, both financially and otherwise. We have an optional survey, which I think Jed is going to put in the chat, that is helping us collect this information. It's super quick. It's just a way of helping us get a sense of what folks are needing, both financially, but also what are the other kinds of supports that they're needing in this moment, because we know that finances is one very important part, but there are other needs that organizations have. So we're doing one-on-one outreach to organizations right now too. And our intention with this is not to overburden organizations with extra work or talking to us while they're trying to provide crisis support. So all of this is really optional, and our intention is to not assume that we know what different groups need, but instead to offer the space for them to tell us directly. We know that there's lots of surveys for nonprofits going out right now about what they need in this moment, but we also understand that LGBTQ-led and serving organizations often have unique and different needs. And so we just want to make sure that we are tailoring all of our efforts to ensure that we are being the most responsive and we're doing exactly what our community needs us to do right now. Our response efforts are going to continue to shift and evolve as we learn more. And as organizations share feedback with us about what they're needing, we're going to figure out additional ways that we can show up for them. I also just want to note that for those folks who are working with organizations, we're committed to being radically flexible in this moment and doing everything in our power to alleviate any anxiety about meeting grant deliverables or sending us updates. Like, that should be the furthest thing from your mind right now. Most of our funding is general operating to begin with, and we don't have a ton of reporting anyways, but we just want to make sure that organizations know you have our full support. Do what you need to do. Don't worry about any of that. So in the conversations and feedback that we're getting from organizations and groups, we're also listening really deeply for the ways that, other than financial resources, which we already know that is needed, we may be of support to our communities. So in the coming weeks, we're building out broader response efforts to try to meet other needs that we're hearing about. And this might include things like helping to find volunteers, helping to acquire and distribute supply needs, providing in-kind support through our own staff time around things like helping with continuity planning or changing policies and practices, help with communications, supporting new technology needs, like maybe we need to get some additional Zoom licenses so other organizations can use this meeting platform, creating and sort of amassing different lists of resources to be able to have those in one place. So these are all options that we're exploring, as well as looking into supporting advocacy efforts that help to ensure that nonprofits and LGBTQ folks in particular are being represented as different relief packages are being considered on a federal level and also on a local level. So we are really exploring all of the options that we might have, and we'll be building out more of a broader response effort in the coming weeks and months. And I just want to put a note out there that if there are other roles that we can be playing that you think that we could show up for organizations or for community, we really encourage you to reach out and let us know. We welcome your feedback and ideas, so you can share these in the chat. You can reach out to me directly, Katie, K-A-T-I-E, at pridefoundation.org. We're really trying to build this as we go and be as responsive as we possibly can. So please do feel like we can be a partner in this, and that we encourage you to share with us what you're needing, and we'll see what we can do to help bridge some of those gaps. We also made the decision to reallocate a portion of the resources that we do have that are discretionary to launch our Crisis Community Care Fund. We will be proactively making grants from this fund on a rolling basis to support current and recent grantees during this really challenging time. Currently, we have about $85,000 in that fund. This is just as of today. We anticipate being able to raise and allocate more money to that in the coming weeks and months. Right now, there's no application process. Our staff is going to handle all of the administrative efforts. And given the limited resources that we do have at this time, we're focusing what we have on current and recent grantees. And as more funds become available, we might shift to making this an open process in the future. And our resource allocation is happening based on the understanding that we're gaining from the conversations and the feedback that we're having with organizations who are being hardest hit right now. And so we will plan to provide support on an ongoing basis. This isn't a one-time opportunity. And our intention right now is to keep moving money to those communities we talked about who are going to be really impacted, and doing this both in the short term as well as building out over the long term. And we're hoping for the first round of grants from this fund to go out in the next couple of weeks. So for organizations on the phone, I just want to be mindful that there might be questions around this, and also around our regular annual community grant cycle, which was scheduled to open at the end of April. And we're evaluating the timing and the process for the cycle to ensure that we're moving resources as quickly as we can with as low barriers as possible, and recognizing that this is one of our strategies to continue resourcing communities over a longer duration of time too. So more information to come on that. And I'll just pause again. Are there questions that are emerging?
Yes, we do have one question, and it's how do we let staff know what we need if we have not been hearing from staff? And I can answer that one. Please, if you want to reach out to myself at Jeremiah at pridefoundation.org, or any of our regional staff across the region from your state, Jed just put in the chat box a link to where you can find the information and emails for anyone on our staff. But yes, please, if you haven't been reached out to, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or any of the regional staff.
And just to follow up on that, we're very much in process of that. So if you haven't heard from us, you likely will be hearing from us this week. But definitely proactively reach out, and we'll make time. Thank you. So one of the other major things that we're working on right now is raising more resources to support the breadth of the response efforts that we've just been talking about, to ensure that we're supporting our community in all of the ways that are needed right now and that will continue to be needed. So we're going to be working with our board to figure out what portion of our own resources we can allocate to these efforts, including those dollars as well as the time that we have with our staff. And we're reaching out to all of our institutional partners in philanthropy that we've been working with to ask for their support with our efforts to serve queer and trans folks across the Northwest. We know that there are a lot of pooled funds and a lot of different funding opportunities that are emerging across the field of philanthropy right now, and we want to make sure that good portions of those resources continue to be directed to communities who are impacted most, including LGBTQ communities. So we're definitely trying to partner with other foundations in that regard to both work to help them align their funding with the groups that we know are doing the work on the ground, as well as to support Pride Foundation through these efforts. We're working to reach out to all of our supporters, like many of you who are on the call today, and our corporate partners to ask for y'all to join us in these efforts and to really support what you can right now. And we're also doing advising of other foundations and with our fund holders on where they can direct their giving. And we're trying to create as much as alignment and collaboration as possible within all of this, knowing that at the end of the day, we have shared intentions around moving as much money and resources and efforts as we can to LGBTQ communities across the Northwest. We expect that in the coming weeks and months, our response efforts are going to change, and they're intentionally going to evolve to what the landscape looks like and what our communities are telling us that they need. And we are intentionally positioning Pride Foundation to be responsive, to be flexible, and to be nimble to the changing circumstances and also the changing landscape of what organizations and individuals are facing. So this will be an evolving response effort, and we are just at the very beginning, as I mentioned. So I want to turn us over to a Q&A portion in our remaining minutes to see if there's questions that folks have that we might be able to answer, and then I have a couple more polls as well.
Yes, we have one more question, and that is Pride Foundation staff support available to help organizations find other sources of funding as well, like offering introductions to invite-only foundations?
Yeah, we can certainly, that's one of the things we're thinking about building out resources around, is a list of all of the funds and pooled opportunities that we're hearing about, and hosting those on our website, website. But if you have specific questions, I'm not sure who that question came from, but please do reach out to us and we can see about developing those connections. We're always happy to do whatever we can to help direct foundations to support the organizations we know are doing really critical work for our communities, and we'll use whatever connections we have. I'm seeing some affirmation about that question, that it's a really important one because there are a lot of invite-only funders. So we'll use whatever we can at our disposal to make sure that foundations are resourcing LGBTQ communities in this moment. Are there other questions, Jeremiah?
Yes, there's one that our request for funding invite only. And so
for our funding?
That's not clear. So if David wanted to clarify, but for Pride Foundation's funding, we don't have an application currently for the funding, and we will be reaching out and speaking with our current and previous grantees to identify what's the current needs, and then be providing small grants over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, for the community response fund.
Yeah.
Going to give another minute, see if other questions come in the Q&A or on the chat. And I want to just also underscore that if folks have questions that come up for you after this call, I'm super happy to answer those over email or have one-on-one calls. I see some more questions emerging.
Yes, so the first question is, how can we use this pandemic to make the arguments for the public health benefits of LGBTQ anti-discrimination protections?
Tim Sweeney, it's a fantastic question. I think this pandemic is going to be an incredible opportunity for us to look at our entire public healthcare system and how clearly it is not supporting the people who need it the very most, and that recognizing that anti-discrimination protections is a critical part of making sure that LGBTQ people can access public health benefits. But I think I would actually love to talk with you about that offline and see if maybe that's something we could offer in another webinar to talk about the connection between this current situation and some of the broader fights that we're having on a national level outside of this country. So thank you for that question.
And then there's another question. What are Pride Foundation's current need for resources?
Thanks for that question, Gary. So we are continuing to mobilize resources and fundraise for all of our response efforts, from the fund to building out the additional kinds of support that organizations are going to need. So I can definitely follow up with you offline about that too, one-on-one, but we're looking for both monetary support as well as if folks have other things that they want to offer. We are super open to trying to figure out how to connect people and their time, energy, and resources to the places where it's needed most.
And then, will you accept requests from new prospects? And for our community, for our crisis community care fund, currently right now, we are only funding current grantees and previous grantees. And as we get more resources allocated to that fund, we will be looking at opening up to applications for folks who are not previous and current grantees. So currently, no, but in the future, we're looking into that.
Great. And please do keep putting questions in there. I just want to pose a question to the group again through a poll in our remaining few minutes. Let's see. And unfortunately, the polling function that I thought I had all figured out is not working. Nope, it's asking the same question again. Well, I'm going to end that. The questions that I was trying to ask y'all, clearly we're all learning to navigate this new technology, but whether hosting more briefings like this on our response efforts and what we're learning, whether that would be helpful to folks. So feel free to throw your responses in the chat if you're on here. Oh wait, I just figured out how to do it. I'm going to launch polling. There we go. Sorry, everyone. So the question is, would hosting more briefings like this on our response efforts and what we're learning be helpful? And seeing mostly yeses, few folks who'd prefer to just read email updates, which is great. We can opt in or out depending on our interests. Great. Great. Well, we'll continue. Thanks, everyone, for your answers around that. We'll continue to host briefings like this and definitely even think about some of the more nuanced topics like the one that Tim brought up. And then go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, so there was another question from the comment from the chat box, and it's, do you have a maximum grant to be given from this fund? And so currently, right now, we don't have a maximum limit. We just have a minimum limit where we're trying to make sure that all grants that we're given are $2,500 or above. But currently, right now, we don't have a maximum of what that will look like.
Great, thank you. And so there's just two more polls that I want to do really quickly. And so this one is, what are ways you're interested in being involved in response efforts? And we're just trying to get a sense too from other supporters are whether folks are wanting to volunteer, whether they want to be contributing to response efforts. Your responses here are not linked to your name specifically. This is just to get a sense of like where folks are wanting to put their time and energy right now. Seeing a lot of people are wanting to contribute to response efforts, so that's fantastic. We encourage you to do that. I think as volunteering opportunities evolve to be able to happen from our homes, I think that will continue to evolve as well. And for folks who want to be involved in another way, please do email me. Let me know what those are. We'd love to hear it. Okay. And the final question is for the organizations who are joining us on the phone today. Would hosting a Zoom meeting where groups can talk to one another and ask questions, would that be something that would be useful for y'all for Pride Foundation to host? I'm seeing Q Law Foundation is hosting LGBTQ and legal community resource sharing groups weekly. That's fantastic. So that might be something that we can just partner with Q Law to do as well. Great, and we're seeing a pretty big response that organizations would want to attend something like that. So we'll take that into consideration. We really appreciate you all participating in these pollings just to get us a better sense of what y'all are wanting from us. Again, it's helping us inform our efforts, helping to make sure that they are being responsive to both what organizations need as well as what folks are able to offer at this time. So we'll continue to build these as we move forward, and please, please, please be in touch with us if things are emerging for you. We're going to do our very best to stay in touch with all of you, both through these formats as well as through one-on-one communication. So don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be continually communicating. And I just want to also mention, I know this is a really difficult time, and I appreciate you all making time today to come together, have this conversation, for all of the support that you've shown Pride Foundation and for the organizations that are serving our communities every day. So thank you all so much. We appreciate you. Great. And so I'm going to go ahead and end this, but we will take a look at everything in the comments that emerged and make sure to share those back out too. Thanks, everyone.